So I'm a grumpy git, and this is a book series I'm probably not going to finish. And if you've got nothing better to do for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to tell you why. Let's start off with book one, and I originally got these books years ago when I think they'd first come out and they were being promoted in the shop where I went into, and I really enjoyed them. I think I could credit this series with being the one that got me into vampire fiction in the first place. And as a trilogy, I really enjoyed them. I mean, obviously they're aimed at younger people, so it might not be the hard-hitting drama that you want if you're older, like me. So obviously I've changed, and that plays a part in my opinion of them. But I think they did change as well. It's not just me who changed. The series changed quite a lot, which is what has made me feel differently about it. Now, I got the first book there, and then there is book two here, and then book three, and they don't match, unfortunately. And I had this trilogy, and then a few years later I found out they bought out a book four. Now, I don't want to ruin anyone's night, so there is a spoiler here, but in book three, this one, Elena died. And then in book four, she came back. Fair enough, I mean, it's a supernatural series. You can't really complain when a vampire, that they don't exist, the vampire dies, the vampire comes back as some sort of human plus. You can allow for that, really. But then, 18 years later, they brought out this one, book five. And this book is just completely different. And it's not just that the author had changed, obviously. I got older, the author got older, and your writing style maybe would change over nearly 20 years. The problem with this one is it's a complete continuity mindfuck. So okay, I understand that they've rejigged things a bit because by this time the TV series have come out, and as you can see, these are the two brothers in the series, and Elena's changed. She now has dark hair rather than blonde hair. Jeremy's a 4-year-old girl called Margaret. You know, you can sort of accept that because the TV series, it was always like that. Right from the beginning, these characters were there. Some of the characters were missing, some of the characters were different, some of them didn't get introduced until later series. Bonnie's no longer a gingerhead Scot. Jeremy's a 4-year-old girl. Meredith disappeared, only to turn up later, but she's not a school child. Alright, I can accept those. What I couldn't really accept is probably to keep up with the TV series. They adapted the time period in the books to be modern day, and it wasn't modern day. I mean, it was at the time, but it no longer is. We're talking the 90s, yeah? They're all walking around with mobile phones, tablets, laptops. And fine, yes, some of this stuff existed in the 90s, in the early 90s, but laptops were the size of a house. You didn't take them to a coffee shop with you. There were no tablets. You took your laptop to the coffee shop, and if that lead came out, your work was gone. They didn't have memories, well, memories, you know what I mean. The battery didn't have a memory. There was no battery, is my point. So, all this stuff suddenly existed, and about, I think, between book four and book five, if I remember rightly, it's about 6 months. Fair enough. But in the original books, they don't have mobile phones. It's glaringly obviously missing in the first book. So if you read these now, then if you accept them as they were done in the 90s and you read them as someone who is a child in the tweenies, whatever we're calling them, and then you're thinking, well, this was done in the 90s, so they didn't have that stuff for them. Yeah, I envy some of the stuff that the kids have got now, but book time, it's 6 months later. But in real time, it's obviously nearly 20 years, but they've all suddenly got mobile phones, with no explanation as to why they've got mobile phones. I mean, this is a fictional series. You could have created some explanation, no matter how ridiculous the explanation was, there could have been an explanation. They could have all, pricked their fingers on some thorn with some kind of poison that makes you sleep for 20 years, and then they woke up thinking, what the fuck happened? And then carried on. But no, nothing, no explanation at all. Imagine if you went to sleep tonight and then woke up in the morning and people are zipping past you on hoverboards on your way to work or school or uni or wherever you're going. You're gonna notice people, instead of waiting for the bus, they're queuing up at the end of the road to teleport to work. They've always got little stations like they've got in Twin Maker. I mean, that worked in that book, but seriously, you're gonna notice. You're gonna notice if you've suddenly missed 20 years. I'd want to know what was going on. I'd be starting to worry. I'd at least mention it to somebody. Have you noticed this too? Have you noticed there's some of this technology that I've never seen before? They don't notice at all. It doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous. I mean, I don't mind the TV series. I actually watched the TV series because I'd read the books and then found out from that there were more books. And if the books had followed on from the other books, it'd be fine. But they tried to copy the TV series, but the TV series was different already. And I can accept the difference in the TV series because it didn't suddenly jump to a completely different time period. It's ridiculous. I mean, yeah, you get flashbacks in the TV series, but that makes sense. Within the narrative, it makes sense. It doesn't make sense for these children who are still living in the 90s, technically speaking, that they've all suddenly got mobile phones and tablets and God knows what. That's just, we just didn't have it. We just didn't have it. A tablet in those days would be a slate with a chalk. We didn't have all that stuff. It doesn't make sense, and it just irritated me so much that it entirely put me off the books. Well, the later books. And I think as far as I'm concerned, the book series could have ended at the 3rd book, really. They'd gone through everything. The 2 girls were dead. It was done. Really, it was done. And I sort of accepted the 4th book, but the 5th book and subsequent books, I did get book 6. And I don't think I even got around to reading it because I bought them at the same time and I was so majorly disappointed with book 5 that I couldn't bear to continue. So I don't think I will be finishing this, and I'm pretty sure I won't be buying book 7. So that's the end of the Hat rant, and I know it got a bit and I'm stumbling over my words because it just irritated me so much, but it just was crazy, and I've got no problem with it as it was, and I don't really have a problem with it as it became, but the 2 didn't go together. If you were going to change the end books, then you needed to change the original books, I think, but then you can't do that because they were already out. So really you should have left the books and the series as they were, and then kept the TV series different. That's fine. We're used to that changing, and you either like it or you don't. And I suppose they modernised it for the younger audience, and that's fine. Yeah, because that's probably what I would want if I was a teenager now. But it just didn't make sense. And that's all I can say. It didn't make sense. So that's why I don't like it. That's why I won't be finishing it. And I'm going to say goodbye before I blow a gasket.